What up, Wizards? It's Professor D from Mtg. We like it of Magic, checking in for Strixhaven semester with our first deck tech of the season. And what do the patrons want to see? A deck based around the Elder Dragon that I talked up the most here in previous season. Go figure, right? So today, Jeskai Galazeth.
Look, see there, I tried to tell you not to test my rage, cause you just a yellow belt and I'm a Jeskai sage. You know the deadly martial arts of the black and the white lotus. Someday I'ma be the POTUS, you'll still be a giant scrotum.
Dragon, rock the dragon, Dragon Ball Ziggy. He's so handsome, he's a good boy. Oh, hello, we're rolling. Hi, I'm just sitting here petting my cat. Ziggy joined the show. That's good news for everybody. But where were we? What were we talking about? Jeskai Galazeth. That's the one. Yeah, originally this was on the Patreon poll as Prismari Dragons, but the more I played that deck, the more I didn't like it, and I wanted some, a little bit more dimension, and I wanted to find that from a third color. So I tried Grixis. I had my reasons. And then I tried Temur because I thought, Genesis Ultimatum, that's a good card. Didn't like it as much. I could have just played Temur Adventures. I think that'd have been better. So I wanted something that specifically played to this deck's strengths. So I ended up on Jeskai, and we'll talk about why, because I have my reasons, and this time they're good reasons. But first, let's talk about Galazeth Prismari, because from the moment I saw my dude here, I knew there was something special about you, G. I knew it. And that something special turned out to be Goldspan Dragon, surprising absolutely no one. We already know this card's good. It appropriately has the Midas touch, and that it elevates pretty much any deck that it's in, but that's especially true when you got old Galazeth on turn 4 on the curve up underneath it, because these two cards work together really well. That led me to playing a playset of Goal and a 3-of Gal. Now, in case you haven't read Gal yet, this is just a 4-mana 3/4 flyer, which doesn't look like anything special, but on the ETB trigger, you get a treasure token, and so long as you're just casting Instants and Sorceries, you get to keep those treasure tokens around when you tap them, and they tap for any color. Now, the stats on Galley continue to not impress me, even after playing the card in a whole bunch of different decks over the last 5 days, but the interaction with Goldspan continues to be more than worth it. If you intend to play these two cards on curve one after the other, first of all, you can call your deck Double Dragon. That's something to get excited about, but also, they work together so well. You'll drop your Galazeth on turn 4. If you don't get another land, it's not a big deal. You got a treasure token out of the deal, so you can cast your Goldspan on the next turn. That said, if you do drop a land, you can drop your Goldspan, attack with it, and suddenly you have either 4 mana in sacrificable treasure tokens or 2 mana in tappable treasure tokens to try and cast another spell or protect either one of your creatures. Of course, if you decide to spend neither of those treasure tokens and the next turn rolls around, maybe you attack with your Goldspan Dragon again, and suddenly you have an obscene amount of mana on the table, which is perfect for some of the repulsive stuff we're trying to do in this deck, and both of these cards enable that stuff while also being pretty decent threats in and of themselves. Now, if Galazeth is going to matter so much to us, then obviously Instants and Sorceries have to matter to us too. We want to be able to cast stuff without having to break our treasure tokens. Now, since we're going to have all this extra mana literally just laying around in our treasure trove, then we might as well also have some big ticket Instants and Sorceries to use all that mana on. And luckily, Strixhaven gave us some really good stuff, but we also had some good stuff in the format already. Now, in service of playing cards that fit the mold I'm talking about right now, we actually ended up playing way more expensive Instants and Sorceries than you would have probably thought originally, but that's because a lot of these have an alternate mode on them. We can cash them in for cheap if we don't have the mana to play them and all that. But we'll talk about it in a second. I gotta go ahead and let you know that we're actually playing all 4 copies of Magma Opus, if you can believe it, along with 1 copy of Creative Outburst, which is similarly surprising, but we also have 3 copies of Inspired Ultimatum. Now, Inspired Ultimatum might look weird to you, but it has been patiently waiting for the deck that it goes in. And I think this is the one. Originally I tried Temur because I thought Genesis Ultimatum is where this deck wanted to be. But it turns out that it's in a deck that's based largely around Instants and Sorceries. Genesis Ultimatum's kind of a stinker. This draws you 5 cards, which is the best part of the card right there. But it also just ends games some of the time or kills that Yorion or that Lovestruck Beast or the other 5 toughness creature you're having problems with. Gains you 5 life to get you back in the game and casting more spells. There's a lot of really cool stuff about this card. Just gaining 5 and drawing 5, if you get another turn out of that, you're probably going to win the game a lot of the time. And even if this card doesn't just outright kill your opponent, it usually leads to a win in the next couple of turns. So I wouldn't change it for the world. I love the inclusion of this card here, and I want to point out that we need big ticket Instants and Sorceries for more reasons than just casting them. And we'll get to that in a minute, but there are other reasons I'm playing cards like Ultimatum in the deck. But just know that if there is a deck for Inspired Ultimatum, it's this one. But in any case, moving on, because the other cards might look even weirder to you. Creative Outburst is just a one of, and this is very often a treasure token. This is another thing that can take out creatures that you otherwise aren't able to kill because your just removal's not big enough or whatever. But it also gets you the best card from your top 5. It does all this at instant speed, and that's actually not terrible when you do cast it. But for the most part, this is a treasure token on turn 2 or later for that matter. Same thing with Magma Opus. A lot of times you're just going to cash this in, but when you do cast it, it's probably the single best card in the entire deck to cast. Just look at all the stuff it does. There's so much stuff that it does that it's easy to forget some of the stuff it does, right? When you cast this, you deal 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of targets. I have taken out 3 creatures with this, but I've also used it to dome an opponent and just end the game outright. Notice how much burn we have among, just these cards. We have Galazeth and Goldspan to get in some damage, help, chip away at the opponent. Goldspan has haste. It gets through for attacks a lot and does good damage. And then we have cards like Inspired Ultimatum, Magma Opus to just kind of finish off the game by burning our opponent to death. That has happened more than once, more than a few times really, in playtesting. So just keep in mind that you can do that. But Opus, when played during, say, your opponent's combat step or just before your opponent's combat step, before they pass into attacks, then this card is just unbelievable. It taps down 2 of their creatures, leaves them unable to attack or block for the next turn cycle. Can either take out a bunch of stuff or dome the opponent. You draw a couple of cards and you make a body. So it's just really easy to win the game off of this card, almost no matter when during your opponent's turn that you cast it. And it's honestly not even that hard to cast the card in this deck. What with all the Creative Outburst and Magma Opuses making treasure tokens for you, the Galazeth and the Goldspans making treasure tokens for you. 8 mana looks like a lot, but it's really not that much in this deck. But even if you can theoretically cast them or cash them in at a lower mana cost, it's often not wise to play a babillion really expensive spells in your deck. So why have I gone stupid? Like I don't know nothing about Magic. Well, a big part of that is because we're also playing Draconic Intervention in our deck. So that means in the early game, if we cash in a Magma Opus or Creative Outburst for a treasure token, we're actually getting paid off on turn 4 when we cast Draconic Intervention, which exiles creatures. If you did discard an Opus or an Outburst, you're basically going to kill everything on the board just about every time. I mean, there's some edge cases where you don't, but most of the time, 8 damage is going to exile, slap everything on the table, and leave your Goldspans and Galazeths out, if you do already have creatures out when you play this card, or dragons at the very least, then suddenly it's just a one-sided board wipe that just lets you get in for 4 or 7 or whatever you're doing. So it's just an unbelievable card a lot of the time that's done a whole lot of work against creature decks and playtesting. I was originally a little... I don't want to use the term ambivalent. I was just kind of like tentative about using this card because I thought maybe Storm's Wrath would be better or something, or maybe we don't even need a sweeper, but both of those assessments were incorrect. Storm's Wrath would kill both of our creatures. I don't want that. And we do absolutely need a sweeper because we tend to get in trouble against a lot of aggro decks in the format. So I've been really liking the inclusion of this card, and I wouldn't go down on any in the main deck. I think 3 is right. But of course, any deck playing a sweeper needs to be able to make sure it can find that sweeper before turn 4 in a lot of games. And the best way of doing that is Prismari Command, but it has a whole bunch of other modes on it too. I really, really like this card. This is one of my favorite cards from Strixhaven so far. It can do a lot of stuff. It takes out every creature from Edgewall Innkeeper to white 1-drops and everything in between. There's a lot of different targets for this card right now just on the removal mode, and it can hit face if you want to, which kind of contributes to our burn plan, and that can be important. At least it can find a target for that mode, even against control opponents and Yorion and stuff. So that's good, but sometimes you'll just choose to make a treasure token, especially if you've got a Galazeth Prismari coming up on the next turn, or maybe you want to ramp into a Goldspan Dragon. Lots of reasons to make a treasure token. Also, destroying an artifact will matter if your opponent has a Great Hinge or an Embercleave they're trying to hit you with or whatever. But again, every mode on this card is important, including the draw to discard, which is one of the better modes on the card. Again, if you're looking for your sweeper, it does that. If you're looking for your Galazeth or your Goldspan, it can help you do that on turn 3 at instant speed, while also doing another thing. You can discard an Inspired Ultimatum to this if you're looking to set up a Draconic Intervention on the next turn. There are just so many things that this card does, If you top deck it and you've got another card in your hand at the time, well, then suddenly you're at least drawing 2 cards to try to find the best card in your top couple of cards. So it can help you filter some of the time, and in the late game, you just throw away a couple of lands if you've got all the treasures or, cards that are just not very good in that matchup. to help try to find real gas. You know, it turns out the draw 2 discard mode is probably the mode that I've used the most often on this, but to be able to also create a treasure or pick off a creature at the same time is just unbelievable. The card is very good. You probably expected to see the gruesome twosome at some point, so I might as well go ahead and tell you that we're playing 4 copies of Bonecrusher Giant and 3 copies of Brazen Borrower. Now, this list got really tight. We're about to talk about that in just a second. You know, Brazen Borrower was kind of the first casualty of the cuts because I wanted this to be a 4-of, but it doesn't actually work in every single matchup. That said, the matchups where it does work, Borrower is very good. You know, sometimes we need this against a Seasoned Hallowblade or some other creature like that. And it's a body that can attack, and we kind of need as many of those as we can get in this deck. You know, Galazeth and Goldspan can't do it all themselves, so having another body in the air with at least a decent power is nice. Same thing with Bonecrusher. This isn't in the air or anything, but you know, 4 power body, not too bad on a lot of boards, and this is yet another thing that fits in with our burn plan. Now, it can blow up small creatures, and we absolutely want that. Best thing about the card is that it's a great way of gathering tempo, especially if we're on the play, right? But, you know, just being able to go face with this matters too, because we have 4 Bonecrusher, 3 Prismari command. That's a bunch of that's a bunch of shocks on the same deck. Creative Outburst, Inspired Ultimatum, Magma Opus, all of these deal damage directly to the face. So again, our burn plan is actually really important when playing against control decks and whatnot. So don't think that Bonecrusher just isn't very good against Yorion or whatever. It actually can mean a lot. And the body means a lot too against a ton of decks. So just incredible tempo. And note that, you know, there are a lot of other good things about this card. Like you can cast Petty Theft or Stomp off of Galazeth Prismari tapping treasure tokens, which is massively important. You know, you can cast either one of these off of a Goldspan Dragon treasure token sacrifice, you know, get 2 mana. And you can cast either spell half of both of these cards. So there's a lot of cool like interactions there as well. So these also give us enough 2-drops to kind of round out the curve while also giving us 3-drops to round out the curve. So there's a lot of really important things about these cards. And I mean, they're just 2 of the best cards in the entire format. Didn't you expect to see them? They're here. But another 2 cards that were kind of casualties of a tight deck list, but nonetheless did cool enough stuff that I felt like they were worth playing in some number, were Glass Casket and Mazemind Tome. Now, we're playing a pair of both of these cards. As far as Glass Casket goes, I don't know that we need more than 2 copies of this. We already have Prismari Command, Bonecrusher Giant to take out small creatures, but obviously this can deal with Seasoned Hallowblades, which matters, and, you know, like 3-drop creatures that we can't otherwise deal with. 3 toughness creatures like Soaring Thought Thief that we couldn't otherwise deal with that small ball removal. So sometimes Glass Casket can be a lifesaver. Mazemind Tome, not the absolute most efficient card draw spell in the deck, but in a 3-color deck, it's relatively easy to cast. It can draw some more cards for us, fix some cards. It can gain us a little bit of life, but the best thing that both of these do is tap for mana when you have a Galazeth Prismari out, right? If you play a Glass Casket to take care of your opponent's Speaker of the Heavens, or Luminarch Aspen, or Seasoned Hallowblade, or whatever, on turn 2, and then turn 4, you end up playing a Galazeth Prismari, that makes a treasure token. Well, suddenly you have 2 mana that you can tap to cast a spell, as long as it's an instant or sorcery, and that really matters a lot of the time. So getting either one of these on turn 2, I really like, and I would especially love to play a 3rd copy of Mazemind, but again, the list just got a little bit too tight, and at the end of the day, I felt like Mazemind was not the best card in the list, so it ended up getting cut from 4 down to 2, but I still wanted to play some number of both of these again, because tapping for mana when you have a Galazeth out is really, really good. But the other reason to play Jeskai in this deck was a couple of copies of Narcissist of the Ancient Way. This does everything the deck wants it to do, right? Like, this can ramp us effectively, and all of our big spells, it helps us cast. You know, we have to cast a non-creature spell with the ramp, but all of our best spells are non-creatures, so not a big deal. Gains us a little bit of life, too. Keeps us in the game. Love that about Narcissist. But this also allows you to discard an Inspired Ultimatum and basically kill whatever you want. Put that Inspired Ultimatum in the yard for a Draconic Intervention. You know, draws you a card on that second mode, too. Just unbelievable. And if you ever do Ultimate it, we have enough non-creature spells in the deck that this effectively just kills them within a couple of spells being cast. It's like the Magecraft on a Professor Onyx. Once you do get the ultimate on this, it's not too hard to kill off of it. And I've gotten the ultimate more than once in testing. It's just like such a good card, man. Like, some decks can't deal with a Narcissist, much less Planeswalkers in general. Some decks are just kind of awkward when it comes to dealing with those. So, you know, I don't want to play a billion copies of Narcissist or anything, but I think a couple of copies are in order because she's so synergetic synergy with a lot of what we're trying to do. And she's another removal piece that gains us life and ramps us toward the big stuff. I just don't see a reason not to play at least a pair of Narzolrik. Is that the nickname? I'm not really sure. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about the last couple of spells in the deck before we get to the lands. The convenient thing is, those spells are lands, because we're playing 2 copies of Shatterskull Smashing and a copy of Seagate Restoration, which is a sneaky include, right? Not only is this relatively easy to cast with all of the mana that we're generating in treasure tokens and whatnot, but we can also, tap those treasure tokens with a Galazeth Prismari out. Don't even have to sack them to help us cast a Seagate. Love that. Great card draw spell. Or we can drop it in the yard with a Narcissist. We can drop it in the yard with a Prismari command, and then exile it with a Draconic Intervention to deal like 7 to all of our opponent's creatures and exile them. So a lot of reasons Seagate Restoration's in the deck is at least a 1 of, but honestly, I think you could take another island out and just give it a 2 of Restoration because it does so many cool like extra things in this deck. We're paid off very well just for having this access to this card. But as far as the Shatterskull Smashing, this isn't quite as good to discard to something and then try to like intervention off of it or whatever. But again, we're making a ton of mana in this deck, so sometimes you'll just be able to Shatterskull Smashing like the 2 biggest things off the board, and even if it costs you a treasure token or 2, you don't die. So you'll take that play all day. We might as well play a couple of copies of Smashing. The opportunity cost is super low, and we have enough mana to where this can be an amazing removal spell sometimes. Now, the lands are honestly fairly easy to figure out. We're going to play 4 copies of the Triome, which is actually a really good reason to play this deck in the first place, to play Jeskai, or Teamer for that matter, It's because you get a Triome that way. Playing white is almost free, especially with Pathways too, which we're playing all 4 copies of all the relevant Pathways to the deck. Again, playing a 3rd color here is just effectively free in a lot of ways, especially considering we got all these treasure tokens laying around that produce any color mana, so we might as well play a 3rd color. It's not hard or anything. So with all 4 copies of every relevant pathway and 4 Rogue and Triome, then it's just a matter of like, how do you want to do the basic lands? 3 island, 3 mountain, and I guess a plains. Get in here, plains. You might as well be in the deck, I guess. I don't even know that you have to play this plains, but I'm doing it. Now let's look at the board here, which has a fair number of cards in it, but only a couple of decks that it's really trying to do anything about. We've got Negate and Test of Talents and Disdainful Stroke, 6 sideboard counterspells. Now, if you're in best of 1, you might want to play some main deck Negates or a Disdainful Stroke. I'm not sure. You do you. You probably want main deck counterspells to help protect your Goldspan and stuff like that. Play Negate if you're in best of 1. Against things like Emergent Ultimatum, you're going to take out the Glass Caskets, and you're going to put in Test of Talents, because this is just a blowout. If you can counter their Emergent Ultimatum with a Test of Talents, well, then they just can't cast an ultimatum for the rest of the game, and that is sick. We've also got another copy of Glass Casket, along with 2 Scorching Dragon Fire, 2 Crush the Weak, and another Draconic Intervention. We're going to go all the way up to 4 Intervention and 2 Crush the Weak for those aggro matchups that really just regurgitate creatures onto the board. Crush the Weak is amazing against like the Clarion Spirit deck that's going around right now. Usually it's Boros, sometimes it's Selesnya to take advantage of Toski, but you've seen the deck. Sometimes it's Naya to do both of those things. Crush is very, very good against that deck, and even mono red. But Dragonfire is specifically to take out Faceless Haven, a card that we hate. We hate it. We hate it so much. Get it off the table forever. Scorching Dragonfire does that. Other than that, the last couple of cards are weird. A Heliod's Intervention because we can. That's pretty much it. And then 2 Shark Typhoon. Now, in like long, grindy matchups, we don't have all the threats in the world. Galazeth Prismari, Goldspan Dragon, Brazen Borrower, and Bonecrusher Giant are literally the only threats in the deck. We do have all of our burn, but other times, especially again in very long matchups, it can be a little hard to finish. So Shark Typhoon can either come down as like a huge creature on your opponent's end step and just threaten to win that way, or since we have all these like super expensive, Magma Opus, Inspired Ultimatum, then you can just drop a Shark Typhoon on the table and start making 7/7s and 8/8s and stuff like that. So great way to, make sure that you can actually ride things out in the late game, create bodies, and just win the game. Now, here are your power rankings. A final score of 66, an admirable showing for the old boy, but at the same time, it's not the best score in the world. We do have good game, though, against a shocking number of decks in the format, especially in games 2 and 3. We're much better against Yorion than we are in game 1. Against aggro, we've got a fair number of good sweepers, although mono white can still sometimes pose problems. That said, we can outstat mono white, and even creatures that don't die to a Draconic Intervention like Seasoned Hallowblade again. We can just throw down a Goldspan Dragon, and you usually win the race or just invalidate their Hallow Blade. So we have ways of winning just about every important matchup in the format right now. You know, against Teamer Adventures, we have some game. Again, if they want to match us pound for pound on big expensive spells, you can try, but we're not quite done yet. I don't mean to go dragging this out too much, boo, but it might be the only pun in like the whole video. So I guess you'll take them where you can get them. But in any case, we are going to look at one game that we played with this deck because I think it's a pretty good example. It's kind of a mirror match. We're playing against an Is It Tempo deck that has included green, I think, to play Genesis Ultimatum or something. But either way, this was effectively a mirror match in a lot of ways that I had a lot of fun in. It was a tense match, but I do think that it showcases a lot of what this deck is trying to do. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Our first deck tech of the season. I guess we'll call it Jeskai Dragons, Jeskai Galazeth, in the books. Let me know how you felt about it down there in the comment section. I had a blast making this one because I got to play Is It, and then Teamer, and then Grixis, and then Jeskai, which are like some of my favorite color combinations. Every single one of those color combinations. So I had a lot of fun making this one, if you can't tell by the giant smile on my face. And that's usually a good sign for like a deck being playable, is if like all I can really do is smile while I review the deck and talk about the tech and stuff like that. Like, I had a lot of fun with this one, even against like some of the best decks in the entire format. And if you're having fun in this standard, you are the real winner. So try this one out if you can. I hope that you can. I know there's a lot of mythic wild cards and a lot of brand new stuff. It can be hard to do that. But, you know, if you get a chance to try this one out, I hope that you do. And if you don't, I just hope that you enjoyed the deck tech. You know, if you enjoyed this content, you want to see more like it, make sure you sub, hit the bell for the notifications so you'll actually know when I upload new videos. There's going to be a lot of deck techs and other stuff this season. So jump into the Strictly squad. We're more than happy to have you. Aside from that, like the video if you did enjoy the content. That'll put it in the algorithm. More people will see it. Helps me out, helps you out, helps the community out. Everyone's having fun. It's good. Just like the video. And you will accomplish all of those things. I promise. That's how little effort it takes. But if you do want to help out a little bit more than that, you can always check out the Patreon. Link in the description. $1 a month is all it takes to vote on what decks we do all season long. And I'll have another Patreon poll up super soon. So get on that if you want to. Aside from that, you can watch me play Magic at twitch.tv/SBMTGDev. Or again, hit the link in the description. Same thing with... One more link in the description. You can check out this deck list at tcgplayer.com. That is where you're going to get it for the cheapest. And there's some expensive stuff. So if you're going to buy this deck, you probably want to get it for cheap. Check out TCG Player. Link in the description to the deck list. And I guess I'll throw one more at you. If you didn't see our top 25 Strixhaven cards, check that one out. Had a lot of fun making that too. But aside from that, I'm just looking forward to making a bunch of decks this season. I've already made like 35 on Arena in the last like 5 days. You know, people can say what they want to about this set, but it's really gotten my brewer's brain going. And again, that's kind of how I judge whether a set is successful enough or not. You know, am I excited to play it? I have been very excited and, you know, having a lot of fun playing Strixhaven so far. So again, you get a chance to play this one. Have fun with it. But aside from that, I guess I'm done. Just let me know how you felt about it down there in the comments section. Anything I didn't play, you know, I'm sorry this isn't like a Leyline Tyrant, Terror of the Peaks, like Dragons deck. I apologize for that, but I felt like this was probably the most, you know, effective shell that I could put together. But just let me know how you felt about it down there and what you'd have done different. And I will catch you cats later. I'm Dev from the place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.
Look, see there, I tried to tell you not to test my rage, cause you just a yellow belt and I'm a Jeskai sage. You know the deadly martial arts of the black and the white lotus. Someday I'ma be the POTUS, you'll still be a giant scrotum, and I'll be at the podium and you'll be sodium salty.